In our last lesson, we covered the three major and most common deck archetypes for Magic the Gathering: aggro, combo, and control. But many of you were likely wondering, wait, what about other archetypes such as mid-range and tempo? I really wanted to discuss and compare and contrast mid-range and tempo in their own isolated episode, because I've found that many Magic the Gathering players feel that they know what these terms mean, but then when asked to define them, oftentimes have great difficulty. Sometimes I've even heard players conflate and confuse the two, thinking them synonymous with one another, and nothing could be further from the truth. You see, mid-range and tempo are two archetypes that complement one another. And in today's episode, we'll not only be covering what exactly mid-range and tempo both look like, but we're also going to discuss what winning strategies are with these deck types and how they appear in both limited and constructed environments. This is Tolarian Tutor. The term mid-range tends to get tossed around and can mean different things to different people. However, the core of mid-range rests somewhere between the fast-paced action of an aggro deck and the reactive, slower nature of a control deck. Mid-range decks function rather linearly, progressing through their mana curve every turn by dropping increasingly powerful creatures and spells. Many Magic the Gathering players consider mid-range to be the purest way of playing Magic, as it seeks to simply line up its spells in sequential order and incrementally gain advantage over time. The average card quality of a mid-range deck also tends to be higher than other archetypes and doesn't depend on synergy with other cards, but rather on how well the card is individually able to affect the game on its own. As a result, many of the cards in a constructed mid-range deck will be rares or mythic rares, cards that have been pushed by design to see how good of a card they can make without breaking the game. Let's take a look at a mid-range deck currently in Standard, Mardu Vehicles. Mardu Vehicles seeks to play its creatures and spells on curve, starting with a Thraben Inspector or Toolcraft Exemplar on turn 1, then moving on to cards like Scrapheap Scrounger and Heart of Kiran on turn 2, utilizing spells such as an Unlicensed Disintegration on turn 3, and Gideon, Ally of Zendikar on turn 4. These are all powerful cards that can stand on their own, but together create a powerful deck that can overwhelm your opponent. Because mid-range tends to inhabit an in-between place between aggro and control, it does a pretty good job emulating one or the other after sideboarding. For example, if a mid-range deck gets paired against an aggro deck, it may side in enough pieces to become a quasi-control deck that can hold its ground and neutralize aggro's early attacks. If facing a control deck, mid-range will most likely sideboard aggro pieces, striking earlier with hard-to-neutralize threats that will kill them before Control's finishers take over the game. Looking again at Mardu Vehicles, we can see how replacing Toolcraft Exemplars and Scrapheap Scroungers with Fumigates and Archangel Avacyn can help the deck stay defensive against an aggressive opponent. When facing off against a control deck, Mardu Vehicles will sideboard in cards that are more aggressive or hard to remove. Cards like Selfless Spirit and Chandra, Torch of Defiance, instead of Inventor's Apprentice or Toolcraft Exemplars. However, mid-range's flexibility as an archetype is offset by the fact it can't really commit fully to an alternate win strategy, making it a jack-of-all-trades yet master-of-none style of deck. Ultimately, while a deck like Mardu Vehicles can do a pretty good imitation of an aggro deck, it can't out-aggro something like Red-White Humans or out-control a deck like Blue-White Approach. Mid-range's core strength is in its ability to always play high-value, high-impact cards, and keeping to this strategy is its main way of securing victory. Mid-range is like a jackhammer of a deck, seeking to overwhelm and blast away your opponent using powerful, pushed cards which each individually can hold their own as you progress along the mana curve. In contrast, though Tempo has some aggro and some control elements, it is much more of a precision instrument. Tempo is used to describe a category of decks whose win strategy centers around timing and mana advantage, having the knowledge and resources to know when to play a card at the exact right moment in order to either pull yourself ahead or push your opponents back. Because Tempo is always responding to the development of the board, it can play the role of both aggro and control very effectively by using low-costed conditional cards. Tempo decks will usually get the win by using an undercosted threat that is protected throughout the game, slowly chipping away at your opponent until their life reaches 0. The kind of cards that are usually played in Tempo decks are versatile and relevant to the board's state in all stages of the game, early, middle, and late. For example, non-creature cards like Unsummon and Decision Paralysis push your opponent back, undoing all of their efforts by bouncing back a creature or making 2 of their creatures tapped and irrelevant for 2 turns. Other great low-costed counterspells like Daze and Spell Snare are often used in Tempo, but they're also paired with cards that can paralyze any progress your opponents might make in the game. While Tempo decks are rare in both limited and constructed formats, one of the most recent examples in Standard provides us with a good template of what creatures work well in a Tempo deck. That deck is Blue-White Spirits. Blue-White Spirits uses great tribal synergy and flexibility to evade most threats targeting them on the board, while using their abilities to get through to the win. For example, Rattlechains and Selfless Spirit do a great job of keeping your creatures on the board by giving them hexproof and indestructible at instant speed. Other creatures like Mausoleum Wanderer and Spell Queller are fantastic, not only for applying pressure, but also countering anything your opponent might want to play to develop their board. Nebelgeist Herald is another great card that allows you to tap down opposing creatures when it or any other spirit enters the battlefield. When combined with Rattlechains, Nebelgeist Herald becomes an effective way to keep your opponent pinned down while your spirits finish them off. Tempo is one of the most difficult deck archetypes to play, since you'll need to know exactly when to play certain cards at which point during the game. Timing is everything for Tempo, so as soon as something new hits the board, you'll need to take stock of exactly how it affects the game and react accordingly. Unlike mid-range decks, Tempo doesn't have much room for error. Playing even the wrong land on a turn can be your undoing. While Tempo decks are often hard to find in any given format, they are still usually one of the best decks for whatever meta they're in. While Tempo and Midrange are a bit more rare to find than the broader archetypes of aggro, control, and combo, they are still just as potent and powerful in their own right. And as before, the answer to the common question, which of these archetypes should I play, is whichever one appeals to you. So to review, today on Tolarian Tutor we covered the differences between midrange and tempo, how these decks play out, and what their overarching strategies are. What cards are often used in these archetypes, and of course the various pros and cons for each. This is Tolarian Community College. I'm the professor. Our professional consultant is my own tutor, Emma Handy. Michelle Rapp is our script supervisor. And remember, it's not about winning individual games of Magic. It's about getting better, win or lose. Oh, hello. Do you like Tolarian Tutor and want to see this series continue? What about other programs here at Tolarian Community College? Do you feel they have value to you? If so, then maybe consider becoming a patron over at Patreon, where your support not only gets you great rewards such as signed Magic the Gathering cards and even your name in the credits, but also helps this channel keep producing the content that you know and love. You are the ones who keep this channel going and growing strong. So thank you.